What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Truth or Trends podcast, episode 2. I'm Carter-Samson.
And I'm Corwin Spatheros, and we believe in small government, a merit-based society, and Christian values. All right, so once again, our social medias, we're going to plug those in the description down below, so be sure to follow those if you haven't already.
All right, so we have a great episode coming for you guys for episode 2. I have a list right here. We're going to be going down the list, so 10 claims made by the left that are simply just not true. And I know, Corwin, you have something about the Electoral College at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read each of these claims down the page, and then we're going to go back to the top, and we're going to explain each of them. So the first one, trans women are women. Voter ID is racist. Climate change is a serious threat to humanity. Trump is a threat to democracy. Capitalism causes societal poverty. Our rights come from government. The wealthy pay no taxes. Socialism is the answer to economic prosperity. Charlie Kirk is a fascist. That'll be a fun one. The gender pay gap is unfair. So I'll start this one off. Trans women are women, claim made by the left. They aren't. You're born with XX chromosomes, you're a woman. You're born with XY chromosomes, you're a man. It's just simple. Biological men should not be playing in women's sports. Biological men also shouldn't be going into women's bathrooms. It's common sense, plain and simple. There are biological differences between a man and a woman. The term gender, in my opinion, and I think this revolves around a lot of other things. The term gender is so irrational. The whole idea behind gender is, even though I might be a biological male, I can psychologically think and use my mentality to say, I'm actually a female. I don't think that should be relevant. I think everything when it comes to your sex should be based on sex, not gender. Because again, gender is made up. Gender dysphoria is a mental illness, and we see it too much in today's society. All people want to do is they want attention. That's why this whole gender thing is so popular, because you have the mass media, you have the liberal media pushing dangerous ideologies onto children. And that's what they want to do. The gender ideology is terrible. It's not good for society, and it's a mental health issue.
Yeah, of course, and to add on to that, talking about like the bathroom bans, these policies are an 80-20 issue. 90% of people don't want biological men in women's spaces. As you said, it's common sense, and like no matter how many surgeries these people do, they're still biologically a man or biologically a woman. You can look at an old Pizza Hut restaurant building, and no matter what place of business is in there now, whether it's a doctor's office, a different restaurant, everyone knows that used to be a Pizza Hut at some point. And it's the same thing. It's basic biology. A man can't become a woman, and a woman can't become a man. It's plain and simple, common sense. Used to be very much what everyone believed, and this has just been some woke nonsense that is been pushed over the last 20 years.
So your body is not designed, it is not meant to go through the hormonal treatment, especially young kids. Like, I don't think we should have, 10 to 15-year-olds getting hormone therapy and sex changes. I don't think they should be cutting off their genitals just because they have a psycho idea of, I want to become this, even though I'm not. You can't change them. It's a mental issue. All right. The next thing we got on the list is voter ID is racist, claim made by the left. Do you want to start this one?
Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit in the first episode about like the flip side of trying to figure out what a logical argument would be against voter ID, and there isn't one. It's just that they want to cheat. And like I remember seeing a street interview this guy did, and like even in New York City, in a super liberal area, this guy asked these people, it's like, do you support like showing to have an ID to vote? And they're like, yeah. And it was like, and he was in like Harlem, heavy black area, and he was asking black people this, like, they're like, do you think voter ID is racist? And they were like, no, it just sounds like common sense. I already have to show my ID to buy beer. I have to have an ID to drive. I have to show my ID at the airport to buy a major property like a house or to rent an apartment. You need to show your ID for all these other things. Therefore, you should have to show your ID to vote. This is a common sense policy to require somebody to prove who they are when they go to vote. Here in the state of Kansas, I had to show my ID to vote in the elections I voted in, and like this is just a common sense policy.
Yeah, you're right. It is a common sense policy. Heck, when me and you flew to CLS, when you go to the airport, you got to show an ID. That's just how it is. And I think it's funny that the left says it's racist. And when they say it's racist, they're targeting minority groups such as Hispanics, Latinos, African Americans. So I think it's actually the racism is on them. I think it's racist to assume that they can't afford an ID because that's basically what they're insinuating is that these minority groups cannot afford an ID. Which, first of all, IDs are super cheap. I don't see why somebody can't have an ID unless they're trying to cheat and commit fraud and crimes and such. But an ID is super cheap. Like literally, my ID I have costs me like 15-20 bucks. Like that's how much it costs. So I think it's irrational. You need
Mhm.
voter ID. You want transparent elections. You want transparent anything. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. There's a whole range of things. You want transparency. You need an ID.
Of course.
Okay, next one, number 3. Climate change is a serious threat to humanity. I'll start this one off. So, let me just say, they've been saying it for such a long time. The climate change agenda is a hoax, and it has been for such a long time. Back in the 1970s, you had climate alarmists saying global cooling was going to end humanity. It was going to cause a destruction and environment to the earth. They said that in the 70s. They said 30 years from now, the Maldives Islands in India were going to be underwater. The, I looked up a picture of the Maldives the other day. They look fantastic. They're not underwater. They look fantastic. They Politicians and world leaders have been making money off this issue for so long. You know, like I said, back in the 70s, they were making up all these lies, trying to worry the American people, trying to worry people in other countries that this was going to be a threat to humanity, which it's not. They blame fossil fuels. Number one, fossil fuels are key to human flourishing. We didn't have fossil fuels, we wouldn't have the lights in our house, we wouldn't have the AC and heating units, we wouldn't be able to drive a car, we wouldn't have the clothes we have on now. It's just simple as that. People are more likely to die, 8 times more likely to die from cold temperatures than they are from warm temperatures. Climate change is caused by humans this much, just a tiny, tiny little fraction. Yes, we have seen global temperatures rise 2 degrees recently, but that's not a threat. It really isn't. You can't prove it. There's always going to be a margin of error in scientific research. I mean, you look at the stats, you look at all these chemical compounds. Carbon dioxide makes up 0.04% of the Earth's atmosphere. Carbon monoxide, the harmful toxins they always complain about, make up about 100th of a 1000th of a percent of the Earth's atmosphere. So can you I want the left how is it a serious threat? Or you just want your politicians to make money off it left and right? That's what they want to do.
Yeah, and to add on, you've got, was it in the 90s? I think Al Gore said that like by this time California was going to be like partially underwater and that there was going to be beachfront property in Arizona. Yeah, that still hasn't happened. And then in recent memory, you've got politicians like John Kerry trying to lecture us about climate, and he goes to fly to these climate conferences in a private jet. So it it's pretty obvious it's a scam. And when you look at the reality is that the climate has been changing naturally for since the dawn of time. There's been multiple ice ages that have come and gone. Glaciers phase in and out naturally. So climate change is also natural. It's very minute amount of what the human contribution to climate change is. It's not a crisis. It's the biggest boy who cried wolf over the last 50 years. And it's still like it's just all a scam, trying to push that green new scam, this of these alternative energy propositions that have no upside yet because it's too expensive to produce. When you look at the wind farms, they're take up so much space and they barely work and they still need fossil fuels. Like they need traditional oil to still lubricate those windmills properly. And they think that like alternative electricity just as magically appears from anywhere. The only real alternative energy source that is good is nuclear energy.
Yes. So I was reading this the other day. I watched a video on it. I think the International Government Panel on Climate Change said that we need to cut fossil fuels to net zero by 2100. Think about how destructive that would be. Think about, you see the rise in technology as you go through the course of history, as the future becomes. You see obviously a rise in technology, AI, such whatever. Well, think about it. By 2100, we're going to see a massive increase in technological advances. And what is that fueled by? Fossil fuels. So how are we going to function as a society if we cut fossil fuels to net zero by 2100? Right? Like what are we going to do? How is that going to, that's what, 64 years? It's all just a freaking hoax and they make money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Like
Yeah.
oil, it's the number one industry. It's in everything. Let's continue.
Yep. All right. Number 4, Trump is a threat to democracy. I'll let you start this one.
Huh. Well, for one, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. And we're one
Yes.
of the most unique constitutional republics in the world, that we are a union of 50 states. We're called the United States of America. And for the longest time, until 1913, our senators were chosen by the state legislature. And that's how it really should be. It gives more power back to the state governments, where really the state government should have more power than the federal governments over their local jurisdictions. And, Donald Trump really is in favor of smaller government in certain areas, trying to cut all the waste, fraud, and abuse with Doge back early in the second administration here, as we try to really get Doge ramping up again, really with the Nick Shirley investigations finding more fraud. No, Donald Trump is not a threat to our republic. The real threat to our republic is the rise in communism.
Yes. Under President Trump, he signed the largest tax cuts in American history, putting more money back into the pockets of the American people. When the American people have more money to spend, their spending power increases, which then stimulates the economy. President Trump is America first. Close the border, deport all the illegal immigrants, crack down on crime, become energy independent, soon to be energy dominant. He wants world peace. He's not playing games. F around and find out. Donald Trump is not a threat to democracy or, like you said, our constitutional republic. He's not. In fact, he's the opposite. He actually benefits our country because he puts the American people first. The Democrats don't put the American people first. They want to put communists and socialists and other countries first. That's why under Democrat leadership, we have really failed as a nation. But under President Trump, we were energy independent, secure border, as I said, crime rates low, low taxes, low inflation. He puts America first, not the Democrats. Trump is not a threat. Okay.
Of course.
Capitalism causes societal poverty. Capitalism is the greatest economic system known to mankind. When you innovate and you have incentives, it's only going to drive up the economy. Let's say you're trying to start up your business and you're making a product, whatever that product may be, and you have another business that wants to compete with you that's making the same product. Well, you guys are going to go back and forth. You guys are going to compete. You're going to compete. You're going to drive innovation and incentives. Who's going to make the better product? Who's going to satisfy the customer? That's capitalism. That is how you stimulate the economy right there, is by driving, trying to make that better product. That is capitalism. And being free to go to the school you want to go to, being free to make your own financial decisions, buy your own car, buy your own house. That's financial freedom. That is economic principles at its finest right there. Capitalism is the greatest economic system known to mankind.
Well, yeah, and it's one of the oldest economic systems out there. In the Romans and the Greeks, they did trading. You fast forward, the Venetians were masters of mercantilism in their day, as well as you had the Silk Road. So capitalism is as old as civilization itself, and you can't have a stable economy without capitalism, because under communism, there's no incentive for innovation or improvement in society, as they're all getting paid the same, so there's no reason to make a better product. So under communism and socialism, you have absolute government control, and the quality of everything is terrible because there's no incentive to make anything better, because everyone's getting paid the same low wages and everyone's poor together.
Yeah, you take a look. You take a look at majority of the wealthiest countries on earth. You have the United States of America, you have Iceland, Denmark, New Zealand. There's so many other countries, Croatia. They are all run under a capitalist system. The wealthiest countries in the world run by capitalism. The poorest countries in the world run by communism and socialism. Plain and simple as that. Capitalism is the greatest system known to mankind.
Yes.
Our rights come from government.
Our rights come from God. The Bible says that the truth will set you free. You know, it is the government's job to protect our rights. It says in the Declaration of Independence that our rights are endowed to us by an almighty creator. In the Treaty of Paris that ended the American Revolution, it opened in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. America was always a Christian nation. The peace treaty that formally got us our independence at the end of the American Revolution invoked the Holy Trinity. So we have always been a nation built on Christian values, and we need to bring our country back to its Christian roots.
Yes. You take a look at, you could say, John Locke, George Washington, a whole range of the Enlightenment thinkers with a mixture of the founding fathers. They all believed in God. They all believed that our rights did come from God. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That all comes from God. That doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's like the argument they make with the universe. The Big Bang just happened out of nowhere. No, it has to come from something. Something has to come from something for that thing to occur, and that's God. Our rights come from God, not government.
Oh yeah, and it's always so funny. I once saw like an Instagram reel there where they were like, "Oh, the atheists are like, it's like a oh this will get them type thing," where they're like, "Well, if God created everything, who created God?" And it's like, I can tell you've just never read the Bible, because God is eternal. He was not created. And the Bible
Yeah.
says that. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. God is eternal. He's not a created being. So they try to think, they think that it's this big gotcha, when in reality, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, and I don't want to shy away off topic, but this is something that's really funny. So in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without void and filled with darkness. They like to say, "Oh, well, the Bible only spans, well, what, 6,000 years approximately, but the earth and the universe have been around for hundreds of billions." First of all, that moment where it literally states in Genesis 1:1 that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, that's not a span of 6,000 years. That is the beginning of time right there. That is the beginning of the universe and earth. That's what it's referring to. It's not just referring to a 6,000 year span of the New Testament and some of the Old Testament. You know what I mean? Like where Moses and Joseph and Isaac, all those. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about the beginning. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So nice try, atheists.
Oh, that too, in
All right.
like the Bible, evening, morning, day, creation, 6 days, seventh day is the rest. God has almighty power. So, since God has absolute power, he can spontaneously create things like that have the appearance of being billions of years old, when in reality he just created it at the drop of a hat like that in 6 days.
Okay, the wealthy pay no taxes. I'll start this one off. The current federal income tax rate for the highest marginal rate, because it's down with brackets, is 37%. That's a lot of money. You live in California, state income tax is 13%. So let's say you're making $1 million in California, you got 13%, 14% state income tax. Then you got federal income tax. Then you got gas tax, sales tax. You're only making about what, like $400,000 a year from a $1 million salary? Come on. And here's
That
another thing. You want to talk about all these millionaires and billionaires that make so much money. You want to tax these corporations. Okay, well, if you're really serious about actually taxing these billionaires, then stop using the loopholes. Back in 2016 in the presidential debate, Donald Trump was asked by Anderson Cooper. He said, "Is it true that you paid barely any money in federal income taxes?" Trump said, "Of course I did, and so does Hillary and all of her donors and all of her friends, they do the same thing. So don't come after me about it. Go after them as well. And that's what happened with all this Trump trial with his taxes and estimated value on real estate. They went after him for paying barely any income tax. Well, if you're going to go after Donald Trump, then go after all the other politicians like Nancy Pelosi who does insider trading.
And on top of that, in that debate, Trump called out Hillary about that, and it's like, you were a U.S. senator. Why didn't you close the loopholes and push that policy when you were in the Senate? But she didn't,
Yep.
because he knows and she knows that all of Hillary's donors use it. Her donors that contributed to her Senate campaigns, as well as her presidential campaign, all of her donors use it. Trump named the names too in that debate. He named like George Soros, Warren Buffett,
Oh yeah.
Bill Gates. Everyone who makes that much money uses those loopholes. But Hillary didn't change it, and neither did Biden when he was in the Senate, as well as being the president, because all of their donors also use those benefits, and that's why the tax code remains how it is.
Okay. Socialism is the answer to economic prosperity. No, it is not. We talked about this a few segments ago with capitalism. Under socialism, we talked about this already. You don't have the drive to do anything. Once you're under central government control, you can't own private property, you can't own businesses, you can't own whatever. Why am I going to spend my time working my ass off to go create something if I can't own it? There's nothing I'm that's driven just so my money can go to the government. And so they can put on all these extracurricular regulations and quotas that stunts business growth. That is the core charter mission of socialism. Stunt business growth, make it fair for everybody, even though one person may work harder, he's still going to get the same prize as the person who didn't work hard. The mindset of socialism is I didn't work hard, I didn't get what I want, so I'm going to take all the benefits away from the person that didn't work hard and work their ass off to get what they deserve. So if you want to add to that.
There's a funny quote by 40th President Ronald Reagan, where he's like, I was talking to my friends and their daughter, and the daughter was like, when I grow up, I want to be president of the United States. And he's
I
like,
know this. I love
yeah,
this
what do
one.
you
I
want to
love this.
do? And she's like, I want to give housing and food to the homeless people. And Reagan brings up, I'll tell you what, you can do that right now. You can come to my house and mow my lawn, and I'll pay you $50. And then you can go to the homeless man at the grocery store and give him $50 to go towards food and housing. And then the little girl responded by saying, well, why don't you just hire the homeless man and give him the $50? And he goes, welcome to the Republican Party. It's one of my favorite quips by President Reagan.
I love that. I love that you brought that up. Okay. We have a communist running New York right now, a socialist communist, whatever you want to call them. He's one or the other. There is a reason why you have CEOs and businesses leaving New York. They're taxing the heck out of the wealthy, which is going to drive business and corporations out of that city. The most beautiful city in the world is being ruined right now by this jihadist, communist, socialist that shouldn't even be here in the first place. But let me tell you something. CEOs are leaving left and right. He's freezing rents. That is another form of socialism. So the landlords, how the heck are they going to be resourceful with their money and what you call it, improve their apartment complexes with resources? They're not going to have the finances to do that because they can't regulate their markets because they have a communist that wants to freeze rent. And like I said, businesses are leaving New York. They're taxing the heck out of the wealthy. So what that's going to do is that high tax rate on the wealthy is going to cause them to move to places like Florida, Texas, Ohio, maybe, because they want to go somewhere where the tax environment isn't as extreme, and they don't want increase of taxes. They want decreased taxes to where they can actually make more money and grow their businesses, which then grows the economy. Capitalism works,
Well,
socialism
yeah,
doesn't.
and
Socialism sucks.
relatively, the billionaires, their tax rate should be higher than working class. Nobody is against that. It's that when
Yeah,
you raise it so high, it drives them out, and they're going to go somewhere that has lower tax rates so that it's more affordable. That's another thing. Ronald Reagan, he called taxing big business the hidden sales tax. It's like, so you want to tax big business? Well, then they're just going to raise their costs on the consumer and they'll deal with it that way.
Yep. Got to make up for the profit. All right. Here's a good one. Charlie Kirk is a fascist. I think it's so funny that they call the man that gives you a microphone for 2 hours uninterrupted a fascist. He literally went to college campuses and promoted freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is not a value in fascism. In fact, it's the opposite. Charlie Kirk promoted free speech. He wanted to have open debates. He didn't go after people, he went after their ideas. Charlie Kirk gave you an open mic. He said, "Okay, if you disagree, come to the front of the line where we have a long line waiting. Please don't interrupt. Let our speakers speak." Does that sound like fascism? I don't think it does. He promoted the Constitution. He promoted freedom of
No.
speech, and he promoted free markets and everything that we support. That I don't know why they call the man a fascist. I really don't.
It's they don't understand what the term fascist actually is. They just use it as a buzzword for people they don't like, who are against globalism, who don't want the mass importation of third world migrants that don't assimilate and don't share the same values as we do. They can't define the word fascism, so they just use it on everyone they don't like. And
Yeah.
it's pretty laughable. It's like you're calling people fascists that support having a smaller federal government in favor of local governments and state governments taking more of the responsibility like it should be. So like if that's pretty much the exact opposite of fascism. How is it fascism when you believe in a smaller federal government and believe in free speech and open dialogue, when fascism, on the other hand, is absolute government control? And another thing, President Reagan talked about this. He said, if fascism ever came to America, it'd be in the name of liberalism. Because, he said fascism is the illusion of private enterprise, but complete government control, which is the opposite of conservative values. And conservatism is to get off my back. I don't want the government telling me what to do. And meanwhile, that's like the exact opposite of what fascism is.
I watched a funny clip. It was at a Charlie Kirk debate. I forget what college it was at, but some Turning Point USA member went out to the crowd and put the mic in one of the liberals, like, right up to him. And she was saying, "Go home, fascist." And then openly admits on camera, and I quote, "I have no idea what a fascist is. I'm just calling him a fascist because everybody else is calling him a fascist." Okay, thanks for admitting you guys are delusional. The gender pay gap is unfair. So men typically work about 3 to 4 hours more on average than women do a week. That's number one. So obviously, when you work more hours, you're going to get paid more. That's the whole idea of working overtime. Also, men also work higher paying jobs. You see, majority of lawyers, entrepreneurs, the people who build the skyscrapers, financiers, all those doctors, majority men. You see the babysitters, the hostess, the dentists, the teachers, majority women. They just don't make as much. And you also have biblical roles as a man and a woman in a household. And I know I'm going to get flamed for this. I've gotten flamed for this before, but I really don't care because it's the truth. I'll speak the truth even if people hate me for it. I really don't care.
Amen.
Men are typically designed, like, they handle the finances, majority households. They are the protectors. They handle the big stuff. Women, on the other hand, they handle the nurturing of the children, the cooking. You could say, I don't know, scheduling events. Men and women have different roles in the household. That's just how it is. And you guys clearly don't want to hear the truth. I'm sorry about that. I'm really not, but it's your guys' choice. But I know I'm speaking the truth.
So to circle back on the pay gap hoax, you look at, for example, like the NBA versus the WNBA, and like people who have no idea about how those leagues operate financially will see the massive differences in the salaries and be like, oh, look, that's clear evidence that the gender pay gap is real. It's not. It's quite the opposite, actually. The
Yeah.
NBA rakes in millions, maybe even billions in profits, and it makes sense that these players make as much as they do. You look at the WNBA, that league has been in the negative since its inception and is constantly being given bailouts by the NBA. There's a reason why its players make less than school teachers. It's constantly in the negative, constantly losing money every year, and the revenue is significantly lower compared to the NBA's revenue. So when you look at by the financial numbers of how much revenue the WNBA generates, their salaries are reasonable to how much revenue the WNBA brings in every year. So I'm really tired of hearing leftists claim that the Electoral College benefited the slave states. There's no historical evidence to back it up. Like, you know this, right? So, for context, we're going to go back to 1787 and the Constitutional Convention before we delve deeper into this Electoral College. So, there was two plans for the structure of our legislative branch. There was the New Jersey plan and the Virginia plan. The Virginia plan wanted two houses of Congress, one directly elected by the people and one elected by the state legislatures. Both of them would have their seats for each state appropriated by their population. The New Jersey plan only wanted one chamber of Congress, with each state being equally represented.
Yeah.
This was resolved in what's known as the Great Compromise, where a delegate from Connecticut took parts of both of their plans, which is what we've got now today. The U.S. House of Representatives, which is apportioned by population, meaning each state is represented by their population, and the U.S. Senate, where each state is equally represented. Each state gets 2 senators. And before 1913, the state legislatures would elect their representatives for the Senate, which, in my opinion, that's how it should be. I don't know about you. We need to repeal the 17th Amendment, in my opinion, and give power back to the states. What about you?
Yeah, I'd love to hear like politicians debate. I haven't really heard anyone talk about actually repealing the 17th Amendment, but we'll see. We'll see what the arguments are if it comes
Yeah,
up.
it's really it's starting to pick up a little bit more recently. But to look back at the Electoral College thing in the complete baseless claim that it benefited slave states. So we're going to look at the 1796 and 1860 elections, the first and last competitive elections where slavery was legal prior to the Civil War. So starting with 1796, there were 139 electoral votes in the electorate. There was 8 free states and 8 slave states. You had free states, New Hampshire with 6, Vermont with 4, Massachusetts with 16, Rhode Island with 4, Connecticut 9, New Jersey 7, New York 12, and Pennsylvania 15. There were 3 states with 10 plus electoral votes. As I said before, Massachusetts had 16, New York 12, Pennsylvania 15. Of the slave states, Virginia had 21, Delaware had 3, Maryland 11, North Carolina 12, South Carolina 8, Georgia 4, Kentucky 4, Tennessee 4. They also had 3 states with 10 plus electoral votes, with one of them having 20 plus. The total amount of electoral votes from free states was a combined 73 electoral votes, while slave states made up 66 of the 139 electoral votes. If we went and used percentage point numbers like we were counting a normal election today, the electorate of free states was made up by 53%, while the slave state electorate was only 47%. That's a 6-point difference. That's not really a competitive race. in an election if you're to win by 6 points.
Yes.
And so now we're gonna look at 1860, where the electorate is bigger. 303 possible electoral votes, 18 free states and 15 slave states. This is where you clearly see that the idea that the Electoral College benefited slave states is complete nonsense. New Hampshire had 5, Vermont had 5, Massachusetts had 13, Rhode Island 4, Connecticut 6, New Jersey 7, Maine 8, New York 35, Pennsylvania 27, Ohio 23, Indiana 13, Illinois 11, Michigan 6, Wisconsin 5, Iowa 4, Minnesota 4, Oregon 3, and California 4.
Yeah.
Total of 183 of the electoral votes were of free states. On the slave state side, Delaware 3, Maryland 8, Virginia 15, North Carolina 10, South Carolina 8, Georgia 10, Florida 3, Kentucky 12, Missouri 9, Tennessee 12, Arkansas 4, Louisiana 6, Mississippi 7, Alabama 9, and Texas 4, with a total of 120 electoral votes. There were 6 free states with 10 or more electoral votes. 3 of them had 20, and only 1 had 30 or more. The slave states, there were only 5 with 10 plus electoral votes, none with 20 or more, and none with 30 or more in the 1860 election. So, a total of 183 to 120 versus the slave states. 60.4% of the electorate in 1860 was from free states, and 39.6% was the slave state electorate. That's a 20.8% difference. In a modern election, if a candidate won by 20.8%, that's considered a landslide. It's not even close. A vast majority of the electorate in 1860 was free states and not slave states.
You read off the free states. You had your numbers, and then you read off the slave states. You see that dramatic decrease in electoral numbers when you read off the slave states. Like, they make some random claim, use history. I encourage all the liberals, if you guys actually want to be right and know the truth, read history, please. Use common sense. Stop playing partisan politics and actually strive toward the truth. That's what we conservatives do. You liberals need to do better.
And to add on to that, the electorate was always majority, like the total cumulative electoral votes was always majority free states.
Yeah.
So the highest that a slave state ever had more electoral votes, the highest it got was in 1812, where Virginia had 25, and they had for 25 in 1816. And the last time they had 25 was 1820, where they dropped to 24, back to 24 in 1824, and they were still there in 1828. They dropped to 23 in 1832. In 1836, they were still there. And then in 1840, they were at 23. Then they dropped to 17 in 1844. Stayed there in 1848. And then in 1852, they dropped to their current 15. Virginia was the only state out of all the slave states to ever reach 20 or more electoral votes, and there was never a slave state to ever have 30 or more electoral votes. Slave states never made up a majority of the electorate at all, and people who want to say, the Electoral College doesn't really reflect population, that's just not true at all either, as electoral votes a state gets are based on how many cumulative seats they have in Congress, which includes the Senate. Everyone has 2 there, and then the House of Representatives, which is reflective of the population. For example, state like Kansas, where I'm at now, currently has 6 electoral votes, 4 for its congressional seats and 2 for its senators.
The Electoral College is fair. It is. If you didn't have electoral college, the same 3 or 4 states would dominate the elections, and nothing would be close at all. Let's say you have an NFL game where the Rams and the Patriots play, and but it's like the Rams scored more points, they won, but the Patriots got more yards, but they scored more points. It's like the electoral college. It works. It's fair.
It was a genius design by the founding fathers. It prevented, cities like New York, Boston, and Philadelphia from dominating all of American politics, since there was both the House, where they were proportioned by population, and then there was equal representation in the Senate. And how many seats you have combined with both is your electoral votes. It's a fair system. And today,
Yep.
if we had no electoral college, Los Angeles, New York City, and Chicago would be dominating all of American politics. And this is why the electoral college is a genius system, because it gives every state a say in the presidential election.
Well, we want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you drew some inspiration from this. You learned a little something. I hope the libs will probably learn something. They probably won't, because they're just going to ignore. They're going to believe in subjective morality, and they're going to just shy away from the truth. That's just how it is. But we want to thank you guys for watching. Episode 3 is coming. It's going to be a banger. We'll see you guys soon. Peace out.
Yep. God bless America.
God bless America.